Hey guys, so I want to welcome you to today's live stream. This is basically an expanded, or basically an extension of last week's live stream that I did over flexibility training. I'm going to be going into a little bit more in depth of the exercises themselves and some of the form aspects and the different types of exercises that you can do with flexibility training. So that's mainly what I'm going to talk about today. um, Before I do that, though, I do want to mention that I have started allowing signups for the end of summer online fitness challenge. um, the link is in the group. It's also on my Facebook page where you can um, start signing up. So if you do have any questions about that, or if you can't find the link, I can always send it to you. Just be sure to check that out. You don't have to have any kind of payment method or anything to sign up. It's free. You get it for 14 days. You get access to all my training, all my all the training workouts, anything related to my program. You get it free for 14 days. You'll get access to me 24/7 messaging. If you need any help with programs, anything of that sort, I'll be there to help you. It's just to sort of get acquainted with what my program has to offer, and just so you know how it works. That's the important part of it, is how the online fitness training works and the process of going through it. It's very seamless. Everything's all integrated together. You get access, with having your fitness tracker like your Apple Watch and Fitbit. It can all be integrated. You can track your progress and things of that sort. And if you have any questions, you can also message me. If you want the link to sign up, you can message me as well about that. But it will be on the group page as well as my Facebook page. But I did want to mention that that's coming up in the next week. I will be starting that challenge. But you can go ahead and sign up today, and then on I want to say it's the 17th, you'll have access to the workout program, and you'll be ready to go on that day, and you'll have access for 14 days. So just let me know if you have any questions or you want to sign up for that. All right, so let's go ahead and get into what I'm going to talk about today. Today's presentation is probably going to be a tad bit longer than my one from last week, because I'm going to go into a little bit more in depth with the flexibility training. So I'm going to break down these exercises, basically a handful of the exercises, not all the exercises I'm going to break down, but I'm going to break down some of the major ones, and sort of go through each of the specific types of stretches. So again, this is an expanded discussion on my previous live stream discussion on flexibility and stretching. So if you haven't watched that, be sure to go back and watch that live stream. It is on YouTube as well, and it is on my group page, so you can watch it there. But that's a basic rundown of sort of just the flexibility training, just basic sort of terms to keep in mind, and just different exercises, just like more of a condensed version of flexibility training. All right, so like I said, this is an in-depth explanation on flexibility training exercises. So today, what I'm going to discuss, this is a sort of basically a blueprint of what I'm going to discuss today, and sort of go through these exercises. So I'm going to start out with the SMR foam rolling exercises, and these exercises will be targeting the calves, the hamstrings, the quadriceps, and the adductor muscles. I'm also going to be doing static stretching, which is the TFL, the hip flexors, pectorals, upper trapezius, scalene, and then as well as the active stretching, the same muscles are going to be targeted. So the TFL, hip flexor, pectoral, upper trapezius, scalene are going to be targeted as well. And then you got your dynamic stretching. Um, we're going to talk about the prisoner squat, the multiplanar lunge with reach, push up with rotation, and the arm circles and jumping jacks. So these are basically the different training exercises we're going to go through and sort of discuss a little bit in detail. and discuss how these exercises work. So I'm going to start out with the SMR foam rolling. I discussed a little bit about foam rolling last week, but I do want to go into detail as to what that is exactly and what it looks like. So I have sort of an example photo here of how a foam roller is used. It's basically just this little round sort of piece of exercise equipment that you use, and it's just stretch certain types of muscles. It's very simple to use, and you use it targeting any specific muscle that is sort of overactive or underactive. So SMR calves. So basically, how this works is you're crossing one leg on top of the other, um, and you're using it to increase pressure to the calf. So you roll along the length of the calf muscle, and you're holding that tender spot for a minimum of 30 seconds. So you're putting that foam roller over your calf, you're rolling it along the length of the calf, and you're holding that for 30 seconds. I am going to have some pictures of how these exercises are described later on. But these are pretty simple. You're just putting it over your calf. Hamstrings, and I do have sort of these photos on the right to sort of show where the hamstrings are and where these specific muscles are. So the SMR hamstring is while you're sitting, the target leg is straight with the roller underneath the posterior thigh, and then you have your opposite knee flexed, and you're rolling along the length of the muscle. So you're rolling it along your hamstrings, but you also want to avoid rolling it over your knee joint. So you're rolling it over your hamstrings, and you're holding, when you feel a tender area, you're holding that for a minimum of 30 seconds over that tender area. So for the quadriceps, you're in a plank position with the knees straight and the roller under your quadriceps. So you're rolling along the length of the muscle, so you're rolling it along your quadriceps. And this exercise can be performed with both legs, or you bilaterally or unilaterally, which is one leg at a time. You also want to avoid rolling over your knee like the last exercise I mentioned. So you're basically rolling along the length of your quadricep muscle, and then you're going to hold that tender area of your quadricep muscle for a minimum of 30 seconds. Okay, the adductors. The adductors, you're going to perform this technique correctly. The foam roller should be placed to the inner thigh, and then you're rolling the length of the muscle to avoid rolling over the length joint. So basically, what the adductor muscle is just your inner thigh area. That's basically what it is. And you're doing the same sort of motion. You're doing that rolling motion over that muscle, over the entirety of that muscle, over your inner thigh, and then you're holding that tender area. When you feel a tender area when you're rolling with the foam roller, you're holding that tender area for a minimum of 30 seconds. And again, all these exercises are very important. Every one of these exercises, not just the foam rolling. Every one of these exercises are important for warm ups and cool downs. These are basically most of the exercises that you're going to be using for warm ups and cool downs. So now we're going to move on to static stretching. So static stretching is basically the same. It's just stretching, normal stretching. I guess that's just more the technical term is static stretching, where you're just holding. You're doing this basically into 1 to 3 sets, and then you're holding that stretch for 30 seconds. So it's almost similar to the SMR foam rolling, but you're not using a foam roller. So this, I've got a sort of example what the TFL is. So the TFL stretch, you're standing in a staggered stance. You got your front leg slightly bent, and then the rear leg is straight. And then you're rotating the rear foot and drawing in the navel. and posteriorly rotating the pelvis and squeezing your butt muscles on the side being stretched. And I am going to show sort of an example of these exercises, some of the exercises later on. But I do haven't showing. I am showing here what the TFL is, and it's basically almost close to your waist here. So here's a good example here for the static hip flexor stretch. So again, this is the same. You're doing either 1 to 3 sets, and you're holding it for 30 seconds. The specific stretch. So the hip flexor stretch, you're kneeling with the front and back legs, with front and back legs flexed at a 90-degree angle, and then you're drawing in your navel, which is your belly button, and you're posteriorly rotating the pelvis, and you're squeezing in your butt muscles to the side being stretched. So this is basically right here is picturing an example of the hip flexor static stretch. And you're just holding these stretches. These aren't like, like a specific, like a movement exercise. You're just holding these. Okay, the static pectoral stretch. So you're standing with the one arm in a 90 arm position, and you're leaning forward until the stretch is felt in the anterior shoulder and chest area. So also, you don't want to allow the shoulders to elevate or shrug during this stretch. So what I've got a picture here right to the right here is basically what the pectoral stretch is you're just, you're holding that, stretching that pectoral muscle, the anterior shoulder and the chest area until you feel that stretch in the anterior shoulder and the chest area. Then you hold that position for 30 seconds. Okay, the static upper trapezius or scalene stretch. So this is basically your neck area, your upper trapezius. So you're grasping the top of your head when you're doing this stretch, and then you have one hand laterally flexed towards the same shoulder, and do not allow the chin to jut forward or the shoulders to shrug. So it's pretty simple. It's pretty self-explanatory. You're just holding that stretch until you feel, sort of that tension. You're going to hold it for 30 seconds when you're doing the exercise. So you're just grasping the top of your head with one hand and laterally flexing toward the same shoulder. So whatever shoulder you're using to hold your head, you're flexing towards that same shoulder. Alrighty, so we're going to go into active stretching here. I do have notes here that I'm sort of keeping track of to make sure I know where I'm supposed to be. So active stretching is just a little bit of an expansion to the static, where you're using a little bit more movement, as I've mentioned last week. These sort of work the same way, except with these, when you're still going to do at least 1 to 3 sets with the active stretching, but you're only going to hold these stretches for about 1 to 2 seconds, and then you're going to repeat them in reps. So between 5 to 10 reps. So basically with these they're more like an exercise. So you are doing a stretch, but you're also doing it in sort of in a repetition. So with the active stretches, are basically going to go cycle through the same sort of exercises again with the static, but you're doing this actively. So this is basically the same, but you're doing it as an active stretch. So again, you're standing in a staggered stance with your front leg slightly bent and your rear leg straight. You're externally rotating your rear foot, and then you're drawing in your navel, which is your belly button, and then you're rotating your pelvis. You're squeezing in your gluteal muscles, which is your butt muscles, to the side being stretched. So what she's doing here in this picture is basically step by step what is being done. So staggered stance, your front leg slightly bent, your rear leg straight, you're rotating your rear foot, you're drawing in your belly button, and you're rotating your pelvis as well as squeezing in your butt all at the same time. And you're doing this for 1 to 3 sets, and you're holding it for 1 to 2 seconds on that stretch, and then you're going to repeat that same stretch 5 to 10 reps. Alright, so we're going to go to the active hip flexor stretch. So this one You're going to kneel with your front leg and your back legs are flexed, and then you're drawing in your belly button and rotating your pelvis. You're squeezing in your butt muscles all at the same time of the side that's being stretched. And I do have on here a progression, but you don't need to worry about the progression too much. So with a lot of these stretches, when you get used to those stretches and you want to sort of challenge yourself, there's progressions that you can do. So like here, you can raise your arm up and over the opposite side while maintaining a pelvis position and holding the side bend position while you slowly rotate posteriorly. So that's just a progression, but basically, with the active hip flexor stretch itself, with no progression, you're just kneeling with your front and back legs. You're drawing in your belly button, and then you're rotating your pelvis and squeezing your gluteal muscles, which is your butt muscles. So you're just holding that stretch for at least 1 to 2 seconds, and you're going to do 5 to 10 reps on that. Alrighty, so the active pectoral stretch. Um, this is basically the same as the other one, but you're doing a different motion. So, or you're doing it in a quicker motion, I guess I should say. So, standing with one arm in a 90-90 arm position, you're leaning forward until a stretch is felt in the interior shoulder and chest area. So, you want to make sure that that stretch is felt in your shoulder area and your chest area. And then you want to do that. You want to hold that stretch for 1 to 2 seconds, and then you want to repeat it. So, desired amount of repetitions, what you're comfortable with. But the basic sort of reps is 5 to 10 reps. So you're gonna, until you feel that shoulder and chest area tense, until you feel the tension, then you're gonna hold that for 1 to 2 seconds, and then repeat the reps. Okay, the upper trapezius scalene stretch, which is basically the same as what we did before. You're gonna grasp the top of the head with one hand and laterally flex towards the same shoulder. Don't allow the chin to jut forward or shoulders shrug during the stretch, and you repeat it for a desired amount of repetitions. So it's the same way. So you're doing 1 to 2 seconds. When you feel that tension, when you're feeling that tension, you're going to hold it for 1 to 2 seconds, stop, and then you're going to do another rep, and then you're going to stop. So when you feel that tension, then you count to 1 to 2 seconds, stop, and then keep going through as many repetitions that you feel comfortable with, or like I said, the basic is 5 to 10 reps. Alrighty, so we're going to go into dynamic stretching next. This is a little bit of an expansion to the active stretching, but somewhat different. These are a little bit more motion heavy, I guess I could say. So dynamic stretching, these are more so exercises, basically. So the prisoner squat is what I'm going to sort of discuss now. Basically, the prisoner squat is, almost like a normal squat, except you're having your arms behind your head, your feet shoulder width apart, of course, shoulder width apart, pointing straight ahead, and performing it just like you would a normal body weight squat. So you're just doing a normal squat, feet shoulder width apart, pointing straight ahead, and you're having your arms behind your head and you're squatting. And so that's basically what a prisoner squat is. Now, I do want to mention with these, the dynamic stretching, basically the blueprint for these, your training variables. So you want to do these for one set, 10 to 15 reps, and then you're doing at least 3 to 10 exercises of dynamic stretching exercises. So with this prisoner squat, you're just going to do one set of this, but you're going to do it 10 to 15 reps. So you're going to squat about 10 to 15 times. The multiplanar lunge with breach. So you're performing a lunge, kind of like what we discussed a little bit with the hip flexor stretch. And you're doing it in multiple planes of motion. So this means you're performing a lunge in a forward, lateral, as well as a turning lunge. So basically what multiplanar means is you're doing it in multiple different positions. You're doing it forward, you're doing it to the side, and you're turning. So it's basically, like it says here, it's multiple planes of motion. You're using different planes of motions to do these stretches, and you're reaching with these stretches. So what's shown here in the picture is basically what you're doing with a multiplanar lunge. So he's doing basically almost like a side lunge and reaching. The push-up with rotation, you may have seen these before. It's basically like you're performing a normal body weight push-up, and then you're using one hand to elevate your body, and then the other arm is up in the air, where you're keeping your abs drawn in, your chin tucked in, and your spine in a neutral position. So you're doing a normal push-up, like you would do any other push-up. You're doing it normally, like you're elevating your body with one arm on the ground, and then you're raising your other arm, and you're raising it up in the air, and then you're just going to go back into push-up position, and then do the rotation on the other side. That's basically, it's pretty self-explanatory on that one. So you're just using your hand to elevate your body when you're raising your other hand up, and then go back into your push-up position. And then again, you're only doing this for one set, and then 10 to 15 reps. Arm circles, you've probably seen these before. You're just forming an arm circle in a slow and moderate speed in both directions. Both arms are facing straight over, and then your palms are facing down, and you're just rotating your arms. Jumping jacks are pretty much self-explanatory. I'm sure you've heard of jumping jacks. But again, the goal for implementing jumping jacks into a warm-up is to elevate the heart rate and respiratory rate and prevent undue fatigue. So jumping jacks in themselves is just to get your heart rate up and your respiratory rate as well. So again, the same with all of these dynamic exercises. You're doing one set of these, and you're doing 10 to 15 reps. So you're doing 10 to 15 jumping jacks with this one. And all the other dynamic exercises, you're going to do 10 to 15 reps at the very least. So that is basically all the dynamic stretches I have for you today. And that is basically all of what I'm going to discuss today. I tried to go into a little bit more in detail with these. I am eventually going to take the time. I got to find the right space to do it. But I am going to take the time to sort of show these forms in motion, and sort of explain these step by step for you to go into better detail. But I wanted to do this in sort of to expand onto the presentation from last week, because I felt like some things might have been confusing, and that's why I wanted to go a little bit into detail with these different stretches, as well as the flexibility training part. But the important part of these is basically for your warm-ups. You're doing a lot of these stretches and things like that for your warm-up before you're starting a workout, the first 5 to 10 minutes where you're starting a workout. And then you also want to do them for a cool down as well. So you get your heart rate back to normal, and you're cooling your body back down back to its normal state. So that's basically what the importance is as it relates to the flexibility training side of your workout. But again, these are mainly just warm-ups and cool downs. This is just a small fraction of what a training regimen would entail. There's so much more that I could go into detail with the different steps of a workout program, but I want to go into the basics and start with the flexibility and stretching, because these are some of the most important things, especially for preventing injuries, is being aware of these, of your posture, your stretches. This is very important. So I hope you guys found this information helpful and valuable. I will likely be doing another live stream next week. I haven't figured out what exactly it will be yet, but I will have it posted likely towards the end of the week or the beginning of next week. I'll have something in mind, and I'll share it in the group where you'll have access to it. If you have any questions, let me know about anything I discussed today, or if there's any questions you have about this upcoming online fitness challenge. Again, you can sign up for that now. If you have any questions for that, just feel free to let me know. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch this. I know this was a little bit more in detail But I hope you sort of understood this a little bit better. I felt like this was probably easier to digest in a way, to where you could understand sort of what these stretches are. So, again, feel free to send me a message if you have any questions, and look forward to sharing some more information with you guys in the next live stream. So, I will see you then.